1-year anniversary, I sat down with Kurt Volker. He's a former U.S. ambassador to NATO. I asked him about the progress that's been made.
Well, I think that a lot of the promise that people expected out of this opening of relations has not really been realized, at least not yet. I think people expected a lot of new commerce, but of course Cuba has not allowed for private property. So any kind of commerce is still directly with the Cuban government rather than with private individuals. So that has not really fostered a growth of commerce. There was a deal announced just recently for direct commercial airline flights. That's a year on, and that's just now being announced. And if you look at the political situation in Cuba, a lot of the hope was that Cuba would start opening up its society more, to be a more open country with more political expression. They've actually had more political arrests in the last year, by about a factor of 2, than they had the preceding year. So I think while it's too early to say that this is never going to produce results, the first year has not been encouraging because we didn't preload the negotiations. I mean, if you want to look at it, what we should have done was had much more give and take built into the negotiation so that the conclusion would have already showed that there were results. Instead, we opened diplomatic relations, which is really raising a flag from our interest section to make it an embassy and putting in an ambassador. So we did that, but we didn't have anything pre-negotiated, and now we've been slogging through that over the last year.
You look at 50 years of deep suspicions of one another. I suspect it would, generally you would think it would be slow. Do you think it accelerates at all in 2016, or is this going to be the pace?
Honestly, I think for now it's not going to accelerate. This 2016 is, of course, the last year of President Obama's administration. And I think not only Cuba, but a lot of countries around the world will be thinking that, okay, we've got a lame duck president, and why should we give up anything now? If we're going to negotiate to something, why don't we do it with the next guy or woman? And at the same time, maybe we can get something more now while everyone's distracted. So I wouldn't expect progress in the next year. I'd actually expect growing dangers around the world.
When you look at, you know, the president can only do so much. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Congress really has the foot on the pedal. And this Congress isn't going to do anything. And we know that. You see any prospect that that might change?
Not in the coming year. Not in the coming year. Again, if you go back to before a year ago, the alternative way to have gone about this was to cut a deal with Congress. Say, I want to be able to lift sanctions, but in order to do that, I need to get X, Y, and Z from Cuba. And that then would become leverage for negotiating with Cuba over what we need to get to have the agreement. We didn't do that. We got the diplomatic relations, but nothing from Cuba, and now Congress is going to be locked in against anything. So I think this is dead in the water for a year, honestly.